This upcoming bit is of Witsit going through the movie The Principal. The Principal is famous for one thing: lying to the scientist and the voiceover actor Kate Mulgrew. Kate Mulgrew is famous for being on the show Star Trek Voyager as Captain Catherine Janeway, and she admits that she was lied to about what she was doing. And if you notice, there's a lot of use of weasel words like apparently or hypothetically and stuff. Especially there's a little pop-up hologram. Yeah, that's just weasel words to try to make real science concepts look not as valid as they are. A lot of these TV documentaries do this kind of thing. There's a movie called Science Friction, which goes over this. This was produced a few years ago by Skeptoid Productions. And it's a long movie. It talks to different scientists about different situations that they were in over the years, where producers called them in, either took their words out of context or edited them or tried to get them to say something that they weren't going to say. So it's kind of a sneaky way of doing things. You got to vet where you get your information from. If it's right before, if you notice that Disney has the movie Atlantis coming out, and they see a TV special about Atlantis saying how it could be real, probably not real. So that's the kind of thing. Some places are better than others, such as PBS or National Geographic or CBC or places like that. Okay, I will go through bit by bit.
And we can go to this question that the stream is titled, could the Earth be in the center of the universe? And though that is considered laughable and primitive and insane according to those that are very ignorant of all of these subjects, if the answer to the question is yes, very simple follow-up would be, how to get there? How to get there, bro? How to get in the center of everything? And the obvious answer is, it was placed there by something. Duh.
We have measured the distance to planets and the sun, and we know we're not the center of the solar system. Plus, we have the observations of the inner planets, and they don't exceed a certain degree of angle from the sun, therefore they must be interior to us. And we also measure things outside of our solar system, so we know we're not the center of the galaxy. So no, we're not the center of the universe. And most of the stuff in this documentary he's watching has been edited to make it look like we're the center, or that the scientists don't know what they're talking about. So we'll go back to what's it. 1 minute here.
Okay, so they don't even try to pull out the coincidence card on the Earth is in the center. It's just so overwhelmingly obvious that if it was in the center of the entire universe, it was placed there. So what did they do? They said it's not in the center, bro. Okay. Why does all the evidence say it looks like it's in the center? Well, option A is that it's in the center. Option B is whatever you can come up with to say it's just an illusion that makes us look like we're in the center, a stubbornly persistent illusion, to quote Stephen Hawking. Now, we've done lots of streams on this channel about this. I have a stream from a few years ago, it's probably been 3 years now, called Geocentrism. I just break down I read all kinds of quotes from people in higher academia, basically conceding the point that all the evidence does suggest that we are in fact in the center, but we disregard that possibility because it's inconvenient for our philosophical bias, that there is no creator, so we don't want to believe that we occupy a special and unique position, because that would mean that we're special and unique. And if we're special and unique compared to everything else, that would mean that this place was created.
What Austin is doing when he goes through people's quotes and cherry picks, well, that's what people call it, is cherry picking, because you look for the ideal things that you want, and then you just pick them and put them in your argument, even if you take them out of context or misrepresent them completely.
And that would mean that there's maybe some moral accountability. Maybe just ducking off and living double lives in the shadows doesn't really work. Maybe like lying to people, you don't really get away with it. Maybe just being a degenerate, you don't actually get away with it.
Okay, I wasn't going to do this. I don't want to get into people's personal lives, but what's it has it coming? You notice in the background that it looks like he's moving? Because he is moving. Because he lost his house. Well, they lost the lease. His wife won't resign the lease because she's no longer living there. Because he did things like spit at her and yell at her, and she finally left him. And I don't really want to talk about other people's lives, but if you're going to go on about moral retribution or accountability, be prepared for other people to bring this up.
Or we can just make up stories and say it looks like we're in the center, bro. It's no big deal. Now, this is actually what they say, okay? This is what they say. They say, we use philosophical... I could construct for you a model with the Earth in a central position akin to the ancient conception of Earth, and it can adequately explain all astronomical observations. We disregard this possibility, though, right? And it's based on philosophical criteria. We use philosophical criteria to determine our models. And a lot of cosmology tries to hide that fact. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just trying to put that out in the open.
No, we don't use philosophy to verify our models. We use actually observations. You should have learned of that when you were in Antarctica and all the experiments that people were doing down there and observations they were doing down there. But I guess you didn't catch on that. Oh, and in the past, we had these weird paths for planets, and we didn't know what caused them. We could describe them mathematically, but we didn't know what caused them. But when we discovered that the planets and Earth go around the sun, and that the Earth can overtake the planets, we realized that how these trails formed in the sky. And so, modern heliocentrism or non-geocentrism actually works better for these a lot better than they did in the past.
Of the principle. And this is a good part here. And I'll just let you guys kind of know this is the part that is about the cosmological crisis. And by the way, we did have a show which has kind of been on pause. I'll bring it back if people like vote for it to come back. Called Middle Ground, meaning like let's meet in the middle before people trip about the shape. Let's meet in the middle. Let's discuss kind of the first part of it, which is, are we moving? Is the Earth moving? You know, really the first question is like, is the Earth an object? You know, but anyway, let's treat it. Is Earth moving? Thus, if not in the center, it's like a middle ground topic, and of course, play on words there. And I would break down like the physics of it.
There are some topics that I do want to talk about in this middle ground area. He tried to discuss things like kinematics and dynamics without doing equations, which is kind of hard. So we'll take a look at some of his older stuff, maybe.
Are you doom scrolling, watching nonsense videos?
Oh, and in the past, we had these weird paths for planets, and we didn't know what caused them. We could describe them mathematically, but we didn't know what caused them. But when we discovered that the planets and Earth go around the sun, and that the Earth can overtake the planets, we realized that how these trails formed in the sky. And so, modern heliocentrism or non-geocentrism actually works better for these a lot better than they did in the past.
Watch this film, The Principle. So shout out to Sungenis. Don't strike me, bro. But it is on YouTube. We are going to comment. And that's my homie. Hung out with him before and after Tim Pool's appearance. So, intro to this part of the topic, cosmological crisis, which is a term that is used in academia. So anyone pretending that we know exactly what's going on doesn't understand their own position, because admittedly they do not. It's a crisis, in fact. But anyway, this is about the fact that a lot of energy was put into explaining how we aren't the center. And then we got some really good telescopes We started looking out, and we're like, wait a minute. Bro, it totally looks like we're in the center. And that was not expected. It was not expected. And so they had to come up with a way to explain why it looks like we're in the center. And so the reoccurring theme here, even going to Michelson-Morley over and over, is the side that says the Earth's not moving and in the center of the universe. So it's a geocentric universe, Earth-centered universe. Its predictions are consistently verified and validated when we get more and more information over and over and over.
There is a cosmological crisis. Part of it deals with that. On the quantum level, there's a lot of energy that's supposed to be there, and on the micro level where gravity takes place, there's not as much energy. But the thing is, that's part of science, is trying to figure out why that is. If we didn't have a puzzle to figure out, there wouldn't be scientists. Scientists are people who study the natural world. So that's what they do. Then they argue using math and figures and data to figure out what really is happening. And as I said before, the principle is full of weasel words. And you see, before he has said the claim of gravity, that's also a weasel word, a claim, because in that instance, because it's the theory of gravity.
And what the mainstream does is they just create a new theory that says, oh, that evidence looks exactly like it would if we were not moving and in the center of the universe, but actually it is an illusion. It's a stubbornly persistent illusion, extremely deceptive sequence of events that just so happens to look like we're not moving, but we are. And, the first one, of course, being Michelson-Morley, showing that the Earth was not moving. There was supposed to be a fringe shift. There was a fringe shift, but it was way too small, so they had to say, oh, actually, there wasn't a fringe shift. That was just air. Trust me, bro. And that time slowed down, and the distances contracted simultaneously, a perfect amount to make the result look exactly like it would if we weren't moving. Because they measured how fast the light traveled, quote unquote, how long it took the light to get to the receiver. And so they said, oh, time itself. Time itself slowed down, and then what we used to measure contracted, but it looks like it's the exact same size. Everything on the Earth contracted just the perfect amount to make it look like the Earth's not moving. That's literally the mainstream accepted answer to this day. Now we're going to fast forward to a little bit later. We start looking out in the sky with some really big telescopes, and it looks like the Earth's in the center again. And oftentimes people confuse us. They're like, well, if I was standing on a mountaintop and I looked around, I can only see so far with my eyes or so far with my binoculars, right? So say the binoculars are like the telescopes. So I'm going to look around with the binoculars and I'm going to say I see 20 miles. Well, I'm going to see 20 miles all the way around me. It's going to make a circle. There's way more than 20 miles. I can only see 20 miles. So to my, ignorant mind, I might think I'm right in the center of this circle, thus everything I can see, everything there is, right? That is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about you can only see the same distance in all directions, thus assuming you're in the center. No. The distribution of everything, stars, what we call galaxies, everything, the actual wavelengths of the light, everything made it look like the Earth was in the center. Okay, that's what we're talking about.
The Michelson-Morley experiment was to try to prove if there was an ether, a substance in space that allowed light to be transmitted. This was an old theory, but with the discovery of electromagnetism by Maxwell, his equations, and Einstein's relativity, it was no longer needed. But this ether, nobody could detect it. Michelson-Morley came up with this experiment where you split a beam of light into two different directions, one perpendicular to the other. And the one that was traveling with the orbit of the Earth, if there was an ether, it should have showed signs of something slowing it down. When it came back and combined with the other light, there should have been like fringes, and there was no fringes. So there was no ether. And this had nothing to do with the movement of the Earth. The Michelson and Morley knew the Earth moved before this, and it was known. The Earth was known to move well before this, so it had nothing to do with the shape of the Earth. The Michelson-Morley experiment was to try to prove if there was an ether, a substance in space that allowed light to be transmitted. This was an old theory, but with the discovery of electromagnetism by Maxwell, his equations, and Einstein's relativity, it was no longer needed. But this ether, nobody could detect it. Michelson-Morley came up with this experiment where you split a beam of light into two different directions, one perpendicular to the other. And the one that was traveling with the orbit of the Earth, if there was an ether, it should have showed signs of something slowing it down. When it came back and combined with the other light, there should have been like fringes, and there was no fringes. So there was no ether. And this had nothing to do with the movement of the Earth. The Michelson and Morley knew the Earth moved before this, and it was known. The Earth was known to move well before this, so it had nothing to do with the shape of the Earth. Here's the thing: there's more to this, and it's already approaching 20 minutes long with this video. So I'm going to stop it here with this one. I'm going to make a part 3. There's going to probably be a part 4. Probably a part 5, because Witsa can't stop speaking like he knows everything. And we'll do that. I'm trying to keep these around 20 minutes, so it's not too long for everybody. So everybody have a good one, and see you in the next during the next video. Well, you won't be seeing me, but